Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome into this snowy, cold Monday morning. Glad to have you in. A historic winter storm swept across the Midwest, up the East Coast over the weekend. Hundreds of thousands of people affected. We have an update of where things stand today and what to expect. Chaos erupted in Minneapolis again over the weekend, Saturday, after hundreds of protesters faced off against federal agents after the shooting of an armed man who allegedly tried to intervene in the arrest of a criminal migrant. We have those updates. And just what are ICE and other federal agents facing in Minneapolis? In one incident, following the shooting, an agent literally lost his finger when a so-called peaceful protester bit his finger off. That's what they're dealing with. We have an update for you from Minnesota. Longtime Democrat operative who worked for top party officials before jumping into private ventures with the now husband of Representative Ilhan Omar. Tim Mynett is his name. He's back in the spotlight as swindling allegations resurface and Congress investigates Omar's skyrocketing net worth upward of $25 million in just a couple of years. Is that possible? And a bill being considered by the South Carolina legislature will require the Ten Commandments in every classroom, along with other certain historical documents. It's a busy, busy Monday. Glad to have you. Let's jump in.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
The potentially historic winter storm expected to impact more than 235 million Americans across nearly 40 states. The storm started Friday and will continue throughout today, possibly into tomorrow. More than 1 million customers lost power over the weekend because of Winter Storm Fern. More than 1 million have been without power starting pretty much late Saturday night over the throughout the night, early morning, and throughout Sunday. As the winter storm rocked the U.S., residents in Florida, Tampa Bay specifically, were enjoying their 70-degree sunny weather. Isn't it just crazy how this weather works? I mean, you got parts of our country, probably about half of our country geographically, is struggling with snow, struggling with ice, and then you go down to Florida, they're out on the beach. It wreaked havoc with travel. More than 11,000 flights in and out of the U.S. and around the country were canceled because of Winter Storm Fern. A total of 11,123 cancellations to be exact, based on numbers from late Sunday night. LaGuardia Airport in New York City had seen 436 of its outgoing flights canceled, with JFK International Airport canceling 443, and that just happened all around, up and down the eastern seaboard. GSP Airport in upstate South Carolina announced fairly early yesterday that all flights in and out were canceled, closed down. And Energy Secretary Chris Wright issued emergency orders yesterday on Sunday for Texas and Mid-Atlantic operators to keep power plants running throughout Winter Storm Fern's rampage. They had to do this in order to keep some of these, evidently there's certain criteria with power plants operating at certain levels because of pollution limits on the plants. So the Energy Secretary bypassed those and said we got to keep these plants running. We got to keep producing power because our grids are maxed out. So just be safe, stay inside, don't go out if you don't have to, and just know that we're about to get through this. Some more today. Hopefully temperatures are going to warm up and we're going to get out of this. So another shooting in Minneapolis over the weekend. And I want to say this very clearly, right up front. We have to respect law enforcement. You've heard me say that over and over. We have to wait for the facts before condemning the actions of ICE agents. There are already a lot of people out there saying, well, they didn't have to shoot the guy. He didn't even have his gun out. He just had it in on his person. Over the weekend, we saw lots of video like we've been seeing in every incident. Chaotic, disturbing footage showing moments before, during, and after the federal agent fatally shot a man identified as Alex Jeffrey Preddy during an immigration enforcement operation. If you've seen the video, it's kind of intense. People yelling. You got all those goofy whistles blowing. Did you hear the whistles blowing? Well, demonstrators have been passing whistles out. There's thousands and thousands of whistles that have been given out, encouraging protesters to blow the whistles when they see an ICE agent. So if you heard those whistles, that's what that's all about. Protesters crowding around the scene, agents trying to control a situation that was clearly spiraling out of control. But here's what you need to remember. Video clips don't tell the whole story. They never do. According to the Department of Homeland Security, Federal Border Patrol officers were in the middle of an arrest of a criminal migrant when this young man, in his 30s, a nurse, ER nurse, allegedly approached them armed with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. DHS says officers attempted to disarm him, that he violently resisted, and that one agent, fearing for his life and the lives of others, fired defensive shots. Now, that's the official statement. That's what law enforcement is saying. And until investigators determine otherwise, that's the version of events that matters. Now, the video circulating online show chaos. In one clip, you see agents pushing Preddy to the ground as protesters scream obscenities at him. And another, a woman filming, can be heard yelling, "What the F is wrong with you?" as gunfire erupts. You hear those crazy whistles just blowing, blowing, blowing. There's panic, there's confusion, there's shock, but none of it answers the central question. Was there an immediate threat to life? That's the standard. That is the question investigators must answer. And you and I can't base, we can't come to a conclusion based on a video we see. Only those officers involved can answer that question. Now, another angle shows Preddy trying to help a woman who had been pushed to the ground during the confrontation. You see tear gas deployed. Officers move in. The crowd tightens. The suspect is pulled away. Struggles on the icy pavement. One officer, you even see him falling down. He slips on the ice. And moments later, the shots are fired. It's tough to watch. But again, watching something is not the same as being there, experiencing it, and understanding. And here's what worries me. Too many voices are rushing to label this another murder. Too many politicians already assigning blame. Too many commentators declaring guilt, not after an investigation, but after a viral video clip. And that's what's so dangerous about the atmosphere we're living in right now, because once you declare law enforcement guilty before the facts are known, You don't just undermine ICE, you undermine every officer who puts on a uniform and walks into uncertainty every single day, whether it's in Minneapolis or in your local community. And plus the fact, it incites additional issues like this, additional episodes like this. Because since the shooting of Renee Good, we've only seen more and more chaos on the streets of Minneapolis, which led to this shooting over the weekend. Let's be honest about it. Had Renee Good, it was a domino effect. Had Renee Good followed orders, she would be alive today. And probably we would not have had some of the demonstrations that we had over the weekend that led to this young man losing his life. And you know, the same applies to him. Had he followed orders, had he not resisted, he would be alive today. This was not a quiet traffic stop. It was a very heated area, a very heated moment in a city that has been under a lot of stress, a lot of tension. Now, the local officials, of course, their first thing is you got to get out of here, get out of our city. It's time for ICE agents, it's time for federal agents to leave Minneapolis. And it raises a good point. I had a friend of mine say, maybe it is time. Maybe Trump should just say, okay, we're going to pull out, and we're also going to pull out federal dollars. You're on your own. You can deal with this chaos. The problem with that is if federal agents are pulled out now, it sends a clear message to these demonstrators, these protesters, to all these groups that you've won. The mob won. The mob, we're going to get out. We're going to let the mob do what the mob wants to do. That is a very dangerous precedent because once we do it in Minneapolis, we'll have to do it in other cities as well. And it just really encourages more chaos. I don't think Donald Trump's going to do it. What do you think? Text me, email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. It's not your fault that losing weight is getting harder and harder. You're eating better, you're moving more, but your body isn't responding the way it used to. That's not willpower, that's metabolism. And believe me, I've learned so much about the metabolism from the folks at PhD Weight Loss, and it's made a huge difference in my life. Joey Hudson here. For many people, years of dieting quietly slows the metabolic system down, so the harder you try, the less progress you see. At PhD Weight Loss, they help people identify what's actually blocking fat loss, and they fix the root cause, not just count calories. If you want to understand why your body isn't cooperating, call PhD Weight Loss now and mention Fix My Weight Loss to unlock the New Year's special. It's free, it's personalized, and it could explain everything. Call 864-644-1900 and say Fix My Weight Loss. That's 864-644-1900 and say Fix My Weight Loss to get started today. You can also find them online at myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com. Start the new year off right and fix your weight loss. Before we move on from the topic of Minneapolis and what happened over the weekend, because, again, it's just very troublesome to see how this chaos continues. I mean, it's just like a deja vu from George Floyd, isn't it? When you see all of this violence on the streets and you see these people, I mean, don't they have jobs to go to? Again, this was an agitated crowd, whistleblowing protesters, physical interference. You saw tear gas, shouting, and then you have an armed individual in the middle of all this. Who in their right mind, if you're going to a peaceful protest, why did he have a gun on him? What was his intentions? I mean, this is the definition of volatility. And when things turn volatile, decisions are made in literal seconds, not minutes. You don't have hours to contemplate it. You make that judgment call like law enforcement officers are trained to do. If the investigation finds wrongdoing, eventually accountability will follow. I promise you. Because no one is above the law, even the ICE agents. But accountability comes after facts, not before them. Because if we reverse that order, if we condemn first and investigate later, then we're no longer a nation of laws. We're a nation of mob reactions. And here's the part that doesn't get said enough. Respecting law enforcement does not mean blind loyalty. It means fairness. It means patience. It means letting trained investigators do their jobs. It means obeying them when they ask you to do something at that very moment. The same standard we would want if it were one of our family, our son, our daughter, our spouse wearing the badge. I mean, we owe that to the officers involved, right? We owe that to the family of the man who died. We owe that to our country. We got to get past this. We can't continue to live in a country that has mass chaos like we're seeing in Minneapolis and other parts of the country, primarily in Minneapolis. They've just gone nuts out there. So how bad is it for ICE and other federal officers? Because I said a minute ago that you don't know, you can't come to a conclusion of what really happened just based on the video. Some people think they can. Oh, look at that. He didn't even have his gun. They'd already taken his gun before they shot him. You don't know what was going through the minds of those officers, and they're the ones who have to make the determination, is our life in danger? Are the lives of these other protesters in danger as well? So just how bad is it for ICE and the other federal officers out there? In the middle of this chaos, and as you can imagine, after the shooting, and word spread very quickly that these goons in ICE uniforms shot another innocent protester. Chaos erupted. And you had a Homeland Security agent who, according to reports, lost a finger. Why? How? According to Tricia McLaughlin, the DHS Assistant Secretary, who posted photos of a sobbing demonstrator and a bloody finger. She said, in Minneapolis, these rioters attacked our law enforcement officer, and one of them bit off our HSI officer's finger. He will lose his finger. This is how out of hand things have gotten out there. Tensions flared as officers tried to secure the area around that area where Alex Jeffrey Preddy was shot and killed. But that's what these officers are dealing with. One of these people bit his finger off, literally. I mean, you saw rioters tossing trash cans on, hitting the vehicles, throwing frozen bottles of water, screaming, F you, F you. According to the Department of Homeland Security, in a statement, about 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement on the scene. Crowd control measures were deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz called in the National Guard to help secure the federal building, which has been used by immigration authorities as a detention center due to the potential for continuing and growing conflict. The inmates are running the asylum. Minneapolis Police Chief O'Hara, we recognize that there's a lot of anger and a lot of questions around what has happened, but we need people to remain peaceful. In the area, we have an unlawful assembly at this time. Thank goodness the Minneapolis Police Chief finally acknowledged that there were some unlawful activities going on by these protesters. It's tragic that this man lost his life. From all accounts, again, 37 years old, died at the scene. He was a good guy otherwise. His family and friends and co-workers describe a very committed, passionate young man who worked in an emergency room as a nurse, ER nurse. And if you've ever been to the ER before, you know how special those people are when you come in and you're frightened and you're panicked and you're hurting and you're sick and they take care of you. But you can't. And by the way, he had a history of protesting too. His mom and dad, when contacted, they learned about the death of their son when an AP reporter called them to discuss this with them and to try to verify his identity. They didn't know that their son had been shot. They had to call around multiple places before they confirmed that their son had been shot. What a horrible way to learn about the loss of a loved one. But they admitted they weren't surprised that he was at the protest. It wasn't like, well, our son wouldn't be at a protest. They admitted that he had been at other protests. Evidently, he had been part of the George Floyd protest. But he has been actively protesting the presence of ICE and President Trump's immigration enforcement. He didn't approve it, didn't like it, and he wanted his voice to be heard. And that ultimately cost him his life. And I'm sad for his family, sad for him. But again, he could be alive today if he'd have just obeyed orders. Hey, folks, your favorite Somali Congresswoman, Ilhan Omar, is back in the headlines, not because of something she voted on or maybe a speech on the U.S. House of Representatives floor, but because of renewed scrutiny surrounding her checkbook, her finances. Specifically, the dramatic increase in the reported value of companies tied to her husband, Tim Mynett. Now, this isn't about guilt or innocence. It's about just simple transparency, oversight, questions that naturally arise when a public official's personal finances change rapidly. And keep in mind, all members of Congress have to do a quarterly financial report. And this is for their good and our good, primarily our good, to keep them from selling influence. So here's the story. Tim Mynett, Ms. Omar's husband, and William Haler are longtime Democrat political operatives. The two worked together years ago while advising then Congressman Keith Ellison, recognize the name? Minnesota's Attorney General now. They later co-founded a political consulting firm called E Street Group, which received nearly $3 million from Omar's congressional campaigns over multiple election cycles. Now, let's be clear, that arrangement is legal, controversial, but legal, especially once Mynett and Omar got married. Now, Mynett and Haler pivoted into private ventures after those campaigns. Venture capital. They invest heavily in cannabis operations and a California wine business. And that's where questions are starting to pile up. Several lawsuits and court filings have accused Mr. Haler and companies co-founded by Mynett, Omar's husband, of making aggressive investment promises that did not materialize. One case involved cannabis investors in South Dakota who alleged they were promised major backing that never happened. The money was eventually returned over time, and attorneys later described the matter as settled amiably. But the delay and circumstances raised a lot of eyebrows and created a lot of headaches. Now, another dispute involved the wine company called E Street Crew, which appeared on Representative Omar's financial disclosures after her marriage. Now, according to filings, the company, their reported value jumped dramatically in a single year. Now, get this, and this is what has raised concern. You tell me. The company's value went from just tens of thousands of dollars to several million almost overnight. Investors in that business, allegedly, they were promised high returns that never came. Again, disputes were settled or dismissed, but the pattern has grown attention. But it appears that Omar and her husband, even though some of the investors weren't getting the returns, they somehow were. And what's drawing congressional interest isn't those old lawsuits. It's the sudden spike in asset valuations reported on Omar's most recent financial disclosure. Now, again, in fairness, she reported those numbers. She volunteered those numbers. Another Mynett-linked firm, Rose Lake Capital, reportedly went from a modest valuation to as high as $25 million in 1 year. Is that even possible? Is that kind of growth possible? Or does it invite questions? I'm going to go with the latter. It invites a lot of questions, especially when outside figures, including former lawmakers listed as advisors, later said they were never formally involved. A lot of questions there. The firm says it removed names from its website due to harassment. Others say they never approved being listed in the first place. It's like they were selling influence to some of their acquaintances, some of their friends who were in high places. Those discrepancies are now part of what investigators say they're going to review. Now, here's the key point. No one is alleging Ilhan Omar of wrongdoing at this stage. Investigations exist to determine facts, not to assign guilt. And I'm not going to be hypocritical here. A little while ago, I was telling you we can't jump to conclusions over ICE agents' actions. We can't jump to conclusions over Ilhan Omar's actions either. But when a member of Congress sees major changes in household wealth tied to businesses connected to campaign spending, you got to believe public scrutiny is not only fair, it's necessary. It's what should happen. Transparency is the price of public office. Ilhan Omar decided to run for Congress. When she did, she kind of put herself in that glass room, right? Republicans made that argument during the Trump years, in the first Trump term when he was being investigated, when everybody, Letitia James and all were going after his business. Democrats have long said, we have to investigate Donald Trump. Well, what's the saying? What's good for the gander is good for the goose. It applies now. And all of this is unfolding, of course, as Minnesota faces one of the largest public fraud scandals, if not in state history, in the U.S. history. Potentially billions of dollars lost through welfare and social services programs. That broader backdrop just increases pressure on elected leaders to be accountable, to show accountability, to be transparent. And that's why this story, I don't think, is going to go away anytime soon. Again, it's not a partisan attack. This applies to both Democrats and Republicans. It's not about getting one lawmaker. It's about trust in our elected officials. If everything checks out, transparency will clear it up. If it doesn't, accountability will then matter. Either way, don't you agree? Sunlight is the answer. You see these congressional candidates paying their family. Look, we have one in right here in my home state of South Carolina. James Clyburn, another Democrat. It's very well known and public knowledge that he pays his family from his congressional fund. Again, it's legal right now. So can't accuse him of doing anything illegally. Is it right? Is it ethical? Does it raise questions? Of course it does. And again, this is legal. Now, some of it, again, there's a gray area there, a gray area that Congress has never fully cleaned up. So let's break it down real quick from an ethical standpoint. Federal election law does not prohibit a campaign from paying a firm owned by a spouse as long as the payments are for legitimate services, the prices are in line with market rates, the transactions are fully disclosed. You can say that Ilhan Omar has probably met that criteria. And that's why Ilhan Omar's campaign payments to E Street Group, the firm that was co-founded by her now husband, were legal, even if many voters found them a bit uncomfortable or questionable. Ethics experts have long argued the rule is too permissive. But as of now, again, the loophole is there. She took advantage of it. After those payments became public, Republicans introduced what they called the Oversight for Members and Relatives Act, or some called it the Omar Act. The idea was very simple. Close a loophole that allows lawmakers to funnel campaign money to spouses or close family members under the banner of consulting or advertising. The bill never became law, which means, again, the behavior is controversial. Yes, it's not illegal under the existing statute. The bigger concern now isn't campaign money, it's the financial disclosures. Members of Congress are required to file annual reports listing business interests, asset values, in pretty broad ranges, by the way, income sources, spousal holdings. We saw this with Nancy Pelosi and her husband and their lucrative stock trading. Those reports don't require exact numbers. And like I said, the ranges are very broad. When a business suddenly jumps from a very modest evaluation, though, of thousands to millions in 1 year, again, it raises eyebrows. What changed? Were new investors involved? Was there a sale, a merger, a major contract of some sort? Or is the valuation based on projections rather than cash value? Those questions don't imply wrongdoing. It's just oversight. But it does raise the question, is this influential member of Congress potentially selling influence? And that's why the law is in place. That's why they have to do these reports. And again, if you don't want to do these reports, don't run for Congress. It's just that simple. If you think it's unfair, don't run for Congress. Let me go back. It's important to separate allegations from conclusions. Some past lawsuits involve companies tied to her husband, Mynett, and his business partners were settled, dismissed, and they're in the history. No court ruling established fraud. No criminal charges were filed. No guilt was adjudicated, but they did settle. Ethics, federal investigators typically focus on a few core questions. Was anything hidden, misreported? Well, she did report it. Were assets deliberately undervalued or overvalued? We don't know that yet. But again, that's the whole idea. You tell me, can a business literally become worth $25-30 million in a year? Are you suspect? Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. We're now in, week 3 of the legislative session in the Palmetto State. A lot of activity, a lot of committee hearings. As you know, last week we saw a committee in the South Carolina House take no action on the idea of closing primaries. There were 2 competing bills, one supported by the party, one supported by as the Post and Courier described them, the far right Freedom Caucus. 2 bills had 2 different ideas to close the primaries because of the conflict, because of what one lawmaker said could cause a civil war within the Republican Party. Nothing was done. No action was taken, which means that bill will probably never see the light of day for the rest of this session. Open primaries are going to continue in South Carolina because we couldn't come together and agree on this. But that's the legislative process. And in these early weeks of the session, the committees are doing the hard work, because what the committees are doing now will determine what eventually goes to a full vote, either in the state House or the state Senate. One bill that got my attention is a bill that will require every classroom in public K through 12 schools and colleges would have to display a copy of the 10 Commandments. It advanced in the House this past week. The House Judiciary Committee voted 18-3 to advance the bill, which also creates the option of displaying numerous other historical documents in classrooms and allows schools to accept volunteer chaplains. Alongside the 11 by 13 inch posters or framed copies of the 10 Commandments, all teachers would also have to display a context statement about the history of schools teaching the text. Schools would not have to pay for posters listing the 10 Commandments under the bill. Districts and universities can collect donations for the posters, or they can use free versions, which the bill requires the Department of Education to provide. And I don't think they'll have any problems getting someone to donate free versions. Do you? I think we could very easily raise the money privately to print copies of the 10 Commandments to put in every single school in South Carolina. Last Wednesday's vote came the same day, and an appeals court heard arguments on a nearly identical law in Louisiana. In 2024, Louisiana's legislature did the same thing. Although both the Louisiana law and the South Carolina bill listed U.S. Supreme Court decisions legislators claimed made the practice legal, a federal judge in Louisiana stopped the law from taking effect in Louisiana in 2024. There's been a number of federal appeals courts that found the law unconstitutional. There's been an appeal brought the case before a full 17-judge panel for a hearing that could happen this week. A South Carolina Representative Beth Bernstein, who is a Democrat in Columbia, said this is still in limbo. It's going to be determined probably by the U.S. Supreme Court. And you know what? I hope it is, because I got a feeling that the Supreme Court is going to decide with Christians on this, right? There's nothing wrong with the Ten Commandments being displayed in schools. Look, when I was growing up, kind of tell you how old I am. I had a birthday recently. We said the Pledge of Allegiance every day in class as we listened to the national anthem. We said the pledge. Now, South Carolina's bill repeats nearly the entire Louisiana law. It was modeled after it, including a quote attorneys challenging Louisiana's law say is attributed incorrectly to James Madison. Defending the historical value of the Ten Commandments, the bill cites Madison as saying, quote, we have staked the whole future of our new nation upon the capacity of each of ourselves to govern ourselves according to the moral principles of the Ten Commandments. Now, historians will challenge that and say that no one has proven that Madison actually said that. Louisiana lawyers are arguing that in court. I don't know. I didn't know James Madison. South Carolina's version expands the bill to classrooms at publicly funded universities. And after a change made during the committee meeting, it lists the Emancipation Proclamation as one of the other documents teachers could display, though that is not required. I don't think that's a bad idea either, do you? Teachers could also put up copies of the Mayflower Compact and the Declaration of Independence. Again, neither of those are required. All three are historical documents, supporters of this legislation say. Representative Richie Yao, a Chesterfield Republican, Baptist pastor, told the South Carolina Daily Gazette, and I read, we are proud in South Carolina to put America first by continuing our history, our heritage, and, of course, our faith. And I would have to agree with Representative Yao. Students aren't meant to unquestionably accept the text, but to engage with it as they would with any other historical document, according to Representative Kathy Landing. It teaches you to think, teaches you to read and to learn and to understand and to come to your own conclusions. Ms. Landing is a Republican from Mount Pleasant, said for our young children to expose to that, to be able to ask questions and maybe even be able to debate and discuss sometimes some of those commandments is not a bad thing. It actually helps strengthen the education process, and Lord knows we need plenty of that. Now, opponents argue the bill violates the Establishment Clause in the Constitution's First Amendment. This is commonly referred to as requiring a separation of church and state. We know that argument does not hold up, though, don't we? They would include the Ten Commandments, but no equivalent for other religions can exclude students who aren't Christian, said Representative John King, a Democrat. He said, while I'm a Christian and believe in the Ten Commandments, I also am not blind in reference to other people, and they do not believe in what we believe in. Representative Justin Bamberg from Bamberg County, also a Democrat, said he didn't mind teachers displaying the Ten Commandments, but didn't understand why that document was required while other important pieces of history were simply allowed under the bill. Bamberg voted in favor of advancing the bill, though. So you see, there is a bipartisan effort here. This is supported by both Republicans and Democrats. Mr. Bamberg said, I don't think anybody has a problem with history. The question is, what and whose history? The bill would also allow school districts to create policies allowing for volunteer chaplains to visit school grounds and counsel students on religious issues while they are there. Students would need parent permission to opt in to any services involving the chaplains. I love this idea as well, to have volunteer chaplains in the schools to answer any questions, to help these kids. So back to the separation of church and state. People often refer to the Constitution as requiring a separation of church and state. That phrase is not actually in the Constitution if you study it. What they're referring to, again, is the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment, which bars an establishment of religion. It's been interpreted by some as banning governments from favoring one religion from the other. The often used phrase can be credited to one of the country's founding fathers who used it in reassuring a group of Baptists concerned about their minority status in Connecticut. January 1st, 1802, a letter to the Danbury Baptist Association, then President Thomas Jefferson described the First Amendment as building a wall of separation between church and state. Doesn't mean, though, that you can't have the two working together. That's what always misunderstood. Look, call your representative. If you support this idea, let them know that we want this bill passed. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Just click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Joey Hudson. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me. Be sure and forward this edition of Just the Truth to some friends. Just click on the share button. Send it to a few of your contacts, because if we're going to build our community and if we're going to win in November, we got to build an army of conservatives. The way we beat Joe Biden is through educating people, and no better way than encouraging them to listen to Just the Truth. Hey, keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your emails always welcome as well. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Don't forget to take advantage of the MyPillow special, $25 for the My Towels 6-piece towel set when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com.